Hey y'all, this is Whitney, and welcome back to another episode of Spastic Chatter. If this is your first episode, Spastic Chatter is a platform meant to feature those in the Cerebral Palsy community, and I get together weekly with individuals with CP like myself to have a uncensored chat, if you will, about what it's like living with this type of disability. And for this week, I have Tyler, and I took to Instagram again, guys, to find guests, like I always say. And Tyler's profile stuck out to me because he's all his pictures are doing cool activities, and his bio says professional stunt gimp on a closed course. Do not attempt. And so I have a feeling this is going to be a really cool conversation. Tyler, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll get on to the discussion. So
Sure. So my name is Tyler Rich. I am 29 years old. I live with spastic diplegic cerebral palsy, and I like to characterize myself as a multidisciplinary adaptive athlete.
That's awesome. So I kind of like I always do this with my guests. I want to take it back to your childhood because like I mentioned before this call, and I kind of mentioned on every episode, cerebral palsy is widely known for it being a childhood disability. So thinking back to how was your childhood growing up with CP? Was it any different than like you would think a normal, quote unquote, normal childhood would be?
I mean, not really. Credit where credit is due. My parents are really rad people. If ever there was something I wanted to do, I was never told no, but I was explicitly told, all right, you want to do XYZ thing? Figure it out.
That's kind of how my parents were. I think we're gonna have a lot in common because like just from like looking at your profile, like I have a twin and two two other siblings, and I did everything that they did. We just adapted what I like how I did stuff like and looking at your profile, you're like into kind of like extreme type stuff, and like raced motocross, so my legs are spastic. So when I would get on the four-wheeler to go like on the track with her, we literally duct tape my legs to the four-wheeler so that they wouldn't move. Do you have any like memories like that from your childhood, like where you just like did like crazy?
Yeah, I mean, so I used to do dumb stuff like all the time, right? And I'm an only child, but I grew up in a neighborhood with a bunch of neighbor kids, and we all got into skateboarding. That was our thing back in the day. And back in the day, there was a movie called Dogtown and Z Boys that came out in about 2003, that it was a documentary basically showcasing the birth of skateboarding. And skateboarding originated in Venice Beach, California. Basically, these guys were all surfers and they were looking for something to do when the waves were bad. And so they started building skateboards, and then they started skating in abandoned pools because there was a huge drought in California in the 70s. And us being all like 13-year-olds, we saw that movie and we were like, holy shit, like we need to do this. We live in central Virginia. There's not a lot of pools around and whatever. But I mean, we were in an up and coming subdivision, so we'd just be little street urchins, and we'd go and we'd, raid construction dumpsters and like build ramps out of plywood. and I was on a K posturpedic walker. For anybody that's listening to this podcast that has CP or knows somebody with CP, it's kind of the standard. It's open in the front, wraps around your back. It's got casters on the front wheels. And initially, it started, we were street luging because the X Games were big back then. So we'd all find the steepest hill in the neighborhood and lay down on our boards and just ride down the hill. And we'd have two kids at the bottom of the street, blocking for cars and stuff. And then a couple guys up at the top of the hill. And we started street luging. And I got really annoyed having to sit at the bottom of the hill, just sitting on my board, waiting for people to come down and bring my walker. So then it occurred to me one day, I was like, well, wait, why don't I just ride the hill standing up? So that's what I started doing. I started downhill skateboarding with my walker. Of course, this was all like pre-smartphone days, so there's no like video footage or anything cool. I wish we had GoPros and stuff back then. But yeah, I mean that was really the genesis of the dumb stuff I started doing. And one instance in particular sticks out in my mind because there was this really, really steep hill. And I was riding a board called a Flex Dex. So it's fiberglass and it's real flexible and it carves really well. Well, I had the bright idea because we're going down this hill and we're doing, 20 miles an hour down a hill. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going down this hill. My buddy's driveway is here. When I get to the driveway, I'll just curve into the driveway because I can't carve on a board and actually like slide it to dissipate speed. So I'll just like carve into the driveway, kick the board out from under me, and then just run until I bleed off the speed. Well, I misjudged the arc of my turn. And when I went to carve into the driveway, I smacked into the front of a parked car. And my parents were watching this and just mortified because it was a pickup truck. So the walker hits the truck. Thankfully, it had a brush guard, so I didn't tear up the truck and set off a car alarm or something. But walker hits the truck. I go underneath the truck, and now I'm like on the board going underneath the truck, and I come out the other side, and I'm like, well, that kind of sucked. And yeah, that was probably the most extreme memory I can think of from childhood as far as doing dangerous stuff.
That's awesome. And I'm sure that, like you said, that there wasn't any smartphones back then. Like, if that happened today and you videotaped it, I'm pretty sure that would go viral with how society is.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm trying to picture this. So you're on your skateboard and your walker is behind you. So you're holding on to your walker while you're skating down a hill. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
That. I'm just trying to picture like the wheels on the walker, like your walkers. You must went through a bunch of walkers.
I destroyed them.
Yeah.
I think growing up, I probably had 5 or 6 different ones over the years. You
Yeah.
know, a standard kid might go through 2 or 3, depending upon how they grow, and I would just beat the tar out of them.
That's funny. So growing up, did you play any sports? Like, were you involved in anything like that, or?
No, I was born in Florida, and so I grew up like fishing and being out on boats and stuff. My godfather had a ranch outside of town, and we would go out and like everybody would ride dirt bikes and stuff, and I'd be in a go-kart. I had a little Yamaha 50 dirt bike that my dad got me when I was a kid with actual training wheels on the back. but I was a kid and I didn't understand the concept of the faster you go on a motorcycle, the more it's going to stay up. And I laid the bike over on me one day and I almost burnt my leg on the tailpipe. And that was the unceremonious end of the dirt bike. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. But as far as like traditional sports and things, I never really did organized sports or anything like that up until we moved to Virginia in 2000. I started adaptive skiing. Um, and I did what they call fore tracking. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but for anybody listening that might not know what fore tracking is, it's basically skiing standing up. Um, and I had a device on the front of my skis called a trombone that keeps your skis from crossing. And then I use what they call outriggers, which are essentially forearm crutches with skis on the end. And that's how I would sort of steady myself and stabilize. And I did that for a period of years. And then in 2005, not to jump ahead, but just for the purpose of the story, in 2005, I had a bunch of surgeries all at once that unfortunately, while I gained a lot of range of motion, um, I wasn't necessarily as diligent with my rehab as I should have been. I was an obstinate little 13-year-old, and so puberty hit and I started putting on a little more weight, little muscle, and so my body just couldn't keep up. And I wound up becoming more of a wheelchair user after the fact as a result of that. And I tried mono skiing, and I don't do well in the cold. I don't particularly like it from a palsy standpoint and a native Floridian standpoint. Like, not a big fan. And tried the mono ski, gave it the old college try, thought I could just kind of manhandle my way through it, and realized there's a lot more balance and finesse involved. And after 2 seasons of trying that, I was like, why am I paying money for the privilege of falling down a hill? Um, so that was the end of my sort of formal sports career for a long time.
Yeah.
So
That's really cool though, and I just have to say that going back to like your first comment about you being in a golf cart with like everybody, or not a go kart, not a golf cart. Um, it's funny because growing up, my parents bought me a go kart so I keep up with like all my friends and friends and my siblings, and I would be in my gut because my cerebral palsy is like more on the moderate to severe side. Like all four limbs are affected. Like my talking and everything is affected. So like I would be like going. I would purposely try to jump the curb, and then I was like high center, and like that was like, and during the days like I didn't like we didn't have cell phones, like it was in the 90s, so like if nobody was outside, like I'd have to wait there like high centered, like for somebody to come like get me off the sidewalk. But I thought that was
hmm
I mean cool. But like going back to what you said about like sports, I read here on your profile that you're in 2019 you did the Spartan, and you did a Spartan race, and you're a para world champion bronze finisher. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So yeah, and this gets into sort of where I'm at now. Jumping back a little bit, in 2017, I got into obstacle course racing. And for anybody that's listening, and even you who might not know what that is, obstacle course racing, the best way I can describe it is it's equal parts trail running and military obstacle course. So you've got like cargo nets and walls and low crawls and like sandbag carries, bucket carries, just carrying weight and just doing dumb stuff in the woods, basically. Um, and this all came about because in 2016, I went out to No Barriers, the adaptive sports conference that moves around and stuff. And at that time, it was held in Copper Mountain, Colorado. And at the time, I was using an adapted Segway with seats on it. And you can't fly with a Segway. The batteries are considered hazmat because of their size. So what I had to do, I took the seats off of my existing Segway, shipped them out to Colorado, and then the organizers of the event found a loaner Segway for me that I then affixed my seats to and used it for the duration of the conference. But while I was waiting for the Segway to be brought up to the venue, um, keep in mind I'm on trekking poles. I'm semi-ambulatory, so I can walk short distances, but my buddies call me Turbo Mantis because I kind of look like a praying mantis when I walk, and um, I've got a pack on my back with like all my clothes and all my gear and stuff, and I walk into the exhibition hall, and we're at 10,000 feet before you start climbing any mountains. So I'm just sucking wind. I mean, I am not used to this elevation. So I get there and I'm like frantically looking around for a chair. My knees are starting to give out. I'm like, I gotta sit like now. And I see this wheelchair sitting there and it looks cool. I mean, it's got knobby tires and looks pretty solid. And I'm like, yeah, this is cool. But more importantly, it's a place to sit. So I just hobble my way over, sling the pack off, plop down into the chair, and I'm just chilling there waiting. It's before everything opens up, and up walks some people, and they're like, "Hey, what's up? We're from Grit Freedom Chair." Like, "What's up, man?" I'm like, "Oh, is this your chair?" Like, "My bad. I just needed a place to sit." And I got to talking with them. The Grit Freedom Chair is an all-terrain manual wheelchair. It's got a levered drive system. It's all pretty much bike parts, so it's pretty resilient. And got to talking with those guys, and I actually signed up to do a hike in that chair. It was really rad. I mean, I'm a pretty outdoorsy guy. I hunt, I fish, I do all this stuff. So it jived well with what I like to do, and the Segway didn't really work well in the cold. Like the sensors freeze up, it doesn't like to fire up when it's cold. Um, and I was like, man, like I gotta get one of these just to use for the wintertime and maybe to take dove hunting. And so I come back home, and at the time they've come down in price. They're affordable as far as adaptive equipment goes. They're like $4,000. At the time they were like six, and I was like, man, like how am I going to? How's this going to work? I'm just going to start saving up, and I'll get one eventually. And the girl I was seeing at the time, she went behind my back and started a GoFundMe. I hate GoFundMes. I'm not a charity case, forgive me, but fuck off.
Yeah.
And well, she started the GoFundMe, and next thing I knew, like half my freaking town had donated to the GoFundMe and wound up getting me a freedom chair. So so now I've got this wheelchair and I'm just taking it on a couple hikes. I went out with my godfather to this one spring area that everybody would go to, like when I was in high school, that I'd heard about it, never actually seen it. And I was able to get down to the spring and get in the water, and it was pretty cool. And I was finding use for the wheelchair, but I was predominantly using the Segway more often than not. And then I was working at a cigar shop at the time, and one of our customers started an obstacle course race to raise funds for a nonprofit to give service dogs to injured veterans. And injured veterans it's always been a cause near and dear to my heart, because when I was in high school and using the Segway a lot, I volunteered for an organization called Segs for Vets that gives segways to injured veterans to help them get around. So I was one of their trainers. And when he said that, yeah, man, this charity gives dogs to vets, like, come out, it'd be awesome. You have this wheelchair, like, it would just be good publicity. Will you do me this favor? Like, it would be good for pictures. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess. I don't know what obstacle course racing is. I don't know, what any of this stuff is, but sure. And he's like, don't worry about it. We'll find you a team. We'll make it work. So day of the event comes up, and this was June of 2017. He says, hey man, I found you a team. It's called Operation Enduring Warrior. It's a mixture of veterans and civilians, and their primary directive is they help injured veterans get through these obstacle course races. Like, oh, that's cool. So I show up to this team, and there's actually a couple people that I knew from Facebook that are either like veterans or civilians in that community that I'd already known that were able-bodied. And I was like, oh, hey guys, what's up? And we set off on this race. It was, I want to say it was a 5K with like 20 obstacles. And I set out on this race, and one of the guys there is a guy by the name of Jonathan Lopez. He was an Army Ranger that was coming back from a deployment. He was over in Belgium training with the Belgian commandos, and he was hit on his motorcycle on the Autobahn doing about 140. And he suffered it's called a brachial plexus injury. So the nerves that go out to your arms are separated at the spinal cord. So you still have like the arm, but it's just dead. And in his case, it was traumatically amputated just above the elbow. And Lopez is an absolute animal. Like this dude, we call it getting Lopez, right? Like he's just persuasive, and he's just a really, really solid dude. And I met Lopez, and he's like, no, man, like this is not a one shot deal. Like you're with us now. You gotta do more events. I was like, huh? And the next week I got rooked into doing a 10K, like a road march in Fredericksburg. And then the week after that, it was like, oh no, now you're going down to South Carolina and doing the city ruck march. And the events just kept building and building and building. And in, I want to say it was November of 2017, I completed my first Spartan race, which Spartan has 3 different lengths. There's the sprint, the super, and the beast. And I didn't know anything about anything. I would have had I known better, I would have done the short one. But the logo for the sprint, which is the short one, is red. And I was like, well, the Spartan shield looks cooler in blue, so I'm just going to sign up for the blue one, not realizing that was the super with twice the length and twice the obstacles. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I wind up doing this event with Operation Enduring Warrior, and to their credit, their primary directive is helping injured veterans, first responders, and law enforcement, right? They are not a civilian-centric charity, but on that same token, everyone that's involved with that group, it's all volunteer, and it is a mixture of veterans and civilians that all assist these injured guys through these courses. And I started making friends, developed kind of a little family, and I met a lady by the name of Erica Walker. At the time, she was affiliated with Spartan. And then there was another nonprofit that I've continued to run with called Oscar Mike, which the Oscar Mike Foundation, kind of same deal. They help injured guys, and a lot of their guys are spinal cord injuries, whether sustained in service or even after the fact. Their founder, Noah Courier, is a quad. He's a quadriplegic. And but so I got to know Erica from Spartan and a couple of their guys. And one of their guys, Earl Granville, he's an above the knee amputee on one side. He lost his leg over in Iraq. And he was talking to Erica one day because Spartan has what they call the elite heats, which are able bodied athletes competing for money and like titles. And he's like, this is cool, but there will never be something like this for us, meaning people with disabilities. And she was like, all right, bet. And Erica, she's like a bulldog, man. When she finds a cause that she likes, she just goes after it with everything she's got. And she was able to convince Spartan to develop the para elite heat. So the first one was in 2018. We were still kind of standardizing the rules at that point. My particular team had two wheelchair athletes, which was, looking back, a little bit of an ambitious task, So we I forget where we came in that one. I want to say we finished like, I don't know, fourth or fifth out of like seven teams, so not the bottom. I wasn't too upset about that. But the following year, they standardized the rules a little bit more and made it so that every team had to have an athlete in a wheelchair. And we lifted the point system from the Paralympics for like wheelchair rugby. So you're assigned a point value based on your level of impairment. So like lowest function is a 1 and highest function is a 3-5. I come in at a 2, and your team has to range between forgive me, I want to say you had to range between 12 and 14 points, and you had to have one athlete in a wheelchair. And so my team that particular year in 2019 was comprised of Logan Aldridge, which this guy is a single arm amputee. He is a CrossFit champion, like straight up national champion. The dude is an absolute animal. Casey Ackery, same deal, right? He's just a hulk of a dude, single arm amputee, competitive CrossFitter, phenomenal coach. And then my buddy Jeremy Ogle, which Ogle, he's done it all, man. I mean, he, again, single arm amputee. Our official name was Team Still Loading, and we came up with it after the fact. We were like, man, we screwed up. We should have been Team All Right, All Right, All Right. Oh, Palsy. Because all of them were missing their left arms, coincidentally. Yeah. But yeah, we took to the course in 2019, and we shot off like a rocket. We were actually leading the race for a good portion of time, and then we got to the obstacles that required two arms. And I'm a relatively athletic dude, but in terms of athleticism, I was the weak link on the team, right? Like those guys train, and like this is their job. I'm just a guy that goes out and has fun. But yeah, we managed to take bronze in 2019. And we were on ESPN, all that jazz. It was really fun. Unfortunately, COVID kind of put the kibosh on the para division. We're kind of rebuilding, as best we can, seeing what the world's going to do and what's going to happen. But I know, like, Spartan in other countries, one of the other competitors, John DeHaan, he's another phenomenal athlete. He's a upper arm amputee, and he has been tapped as the ambassador for Spartan Para in the Netherlands, which is pretty rad. So
that's awesome. That's a pretty incredible story and experience that you had. at the end of, or I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious. I have two final questions for you. Um, being so active, how do you think that's that benefits your that's beneficial for your symptom, for like kind of your symptoms of CP, like being like staying active and um not being sedentary, like you know what I mean? Like, do you think that
Yeah, yeah. So absolutely, and this is something that I harp on everyone that I come in contact with a disability, but especially CP. Um, bodies are meant to move, right? We're kinetic, active beings, and the moment you slow down and you stop, your body starts to rot. Like it's just the nature of things. You're designed to move. So the more active you are and the more movement you do, physically, the better off you're going to be. But another thing that people don't necessarily take into account is the mental benefit of doing hard things. Especially as an adult with CP. I mean, statistically speaking, where it's something like 4 or 5 times more likely than the general population to have like mental issues, whether it be depression, anxiety, substance abuse problems, like all these other like bad mental things. And I mean, I've dealt with that myself, as I'm sure you probably have, and everybody else. We all get mired in our own heads sometimes. So by doing hard things and being active and training hard, when you're faced with an obstacle that you might not necessarily have planned for, um it gives you the mindset of like, oh well, this is easy, I can handle this because I just jumped out of a plane last week, or I slogged through the desert for 20 miles or whatever it is. um
Yeah, I totally agree with that mindset and everything you said. So at the end of every episode, Tyler, I ask my guests if they have any advice for others that are watching this that are in similar situations as themselves. So do you have any advice for people like who want to be active, or even like be on, like try to do a Spartan race? Do you have any advice for those watching?
yeah, I mean, I guess my penultimate is advice is just get out there and do it, man. Your biggest obstacle is the one between your ears, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't listen to the self-doubt and whatever else, well, Tyler did a marathon or whatever and he did this. It's like, yeah, but I started somewhere, right? Like when I got my chair, I could barely make it to the end of the street. And it was just, repetition and practice, and surround yourself with good people that force you to be better and do the uncomfortable things and the hard things. So, like I say, as you approach obstacles in your life, it's easier than you realize.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's all about, I just kind of like you reiterate what you said. It's all about being like persistent, like and like persevering and things like that. So like that, I can totally relate to that, and I think those watching will have a lot of takeaways from this episode. So thank you for being on for agreeing to be on a guest on Spastic Chatter. Where can people follow you on social media, Tyler?
Yeah, so admittedly, I'm terrible at social media. I'm better at doing than I am at posting. But probably your best bet to follow me would be on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Captain Ty, CAPNTY, and my profile is wide open. I don't have anything. It's what you see is what you get. So feel free to give me a follow or shoot me a message if you got questions about anything at all, man. Cerebral palsy, adaptive sports, outreach in your community, whatever it is. if I don't have the answer, I probably know somebody who does. So
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being a guest on this episode. I really enjoyed talking with you. And if you're watching this and you want to be a guest on Spastic Chatter, just feel free to comment wherever you see this video. And I'd love to have you as a guest. So check back next week for another episode of Spastic Chatter. Thanks.